Imagine you are an Ice Age hunter-gatherer living 25,000 years ago. You don't know what a weather forecast is. You don't know about high-pressure systems, evaporation cycles, or meteorology. To you, the sky is a living, breathing entity, and for the last 24 days, that sky has been screaming. It hasn't stopped raining since the middle of last month. Every single piece of leather wrapped around your body is soaked to the bone, rotting, and smells like a wet dog. The fire that keeps you alive is a pile of cold, black sludge. Your feet have turned into a pale, wrinkly mess, and your children have been crying in the dark for a week straight because their stomachs are completely empty. In the modern world, a long rainy week means canceled outdoor plans and a higher Netflix bill. But in the Paleolithic, endless rain was a slow, terrifying environmental execution. It was the ultimate test of human engineering. And how our ancestors survived it changes everything we think we know about ancient drama, prehistoric tech, and the origin of our oldest myths. Let's dismantle a popular Hollywood myth right now. When we think of the Ice Age, we think of giant glaciers, shivering woolly mammoths, and stickmen fighting through massive snowstorms. But paleoclimatologists, scientists who study ancient weather patterns, know that the Ice Age had a much darker, wetter sibling. It's called a pluvial period. During these massive shifts in Earth's history, changes in ocean currents and atmospheric pressure didn't just cause a few afternoon showers. They triggered mega monsoons that lasted for months, years, or even decades. The sky would literally open up and dump trillions of gallons of water onto landscapes that weren't built to handle it. To a prehistoric human, this wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a biological disaster. Humans are mammals, but unlike bears or wolves, we made some very weird evolutionary choices. We shed our thick fur coats hundreds of thousands of years ago in exchange for an elite sweating system. That is fantastic when you're running after a deer on a hot African savanna. It is an absolute catastrophe when it is 4 degrees Celsius outside, the wind is howling, and the sky is throwing a non-stop freezing shower at your naked skin. Without fur, a wet human losing core body heat faces hypothermia within hours. If the rain didn't stop, the camp didn't just get damp, they faced a collective, shivering death sentence. When the rain becomes endless, the entire geography of survival flips upside down. The beautiful grassy valley where your tribe spent the summer foraging suddenly turns into a giant, muddy swamp that wants to swallow your ankles. The first priority for a Paleolithic band facing a pluvial crisis was finding a natural roof. This is where the ultimate prehistoric real estate war began. Contrary to popular belief, cavemen didn't live in caves all the time. Caves are damp, full of bat droppings, and usually dark. But during endless rain, a cave became the equivalent of a multi-million-dollar luxury penthouse. The problem? Every other creature in the forest had the exact same idea. Ancient humans had to actively fight cave bears, cave hyenas, and packs of wolves for control of dry stone shelters. If you lost the fight, you were forced to build temporary shelters using mammoth ribs, tree branches, and animal hides. But building a tent during a torrential downpour is a nightmare. If the leather gets saturated with water, it becomes heavy, sags, and begins to rot. The seams leak. The ground beneath you turns into liquid mud. Our ancestors had to become master structural engineers overnight, inventing slope gradients and drainage ditches around their shelters just to keep their beds from floating away in the middle of the night. Imagine you are the chief hunter of the tribe. The camp hasn't eaten protein in 5 days. You look outside the shelter, and the rain is falling so hard you can barely see your own hand. But you have no choice. You grab your flint spear and step out into the downpour. Within 10 minutes, you realize that hunting in endless rain is practically impossible. First, the visibility is zero. You can't track footprints because the rain washes them away instantly. Second, your main weapon, the bow and arrow or the spear thrower, relies on dry, tensioned materials. Animal sinew cords, which were used to bind stone tips to wooden shafts, act like a sponge when wet. They stretch, lose their grip, and turn into loose rubber bands. Your high-tech hunting gear is completely useless. Even worse, the animals you want to eat aren't stupid. Deer, bison, and wild horses don't stand out in the middle of a torrential storm waiting to be speared. They hide in deep thickets, under cliffs, and inside dense forests where they stay completely still to conserve heat. The human band was trapped in a terrifying paradox. They needed double the calories to keep their body temperatures warm against the wet cold, but their ability to get those calories dropped to near zero. They were burning fuel with an empty tank. In a Paleolithic survival scenario, fire wasn't just for cooking or telling stories. Fire was life. It was your only radiator, your only stove, and your only defense against the predators watching you from the dark forest. If your campfire went out during a month-long rainstorm, your chances of survival plummeted. But how do you keep a fire burning when every single piece of wood in a 10-mile radius is soaked with water? This is where prehistoric humans proved they were geniuses. They didn't just look at wet logs and give up. They used prehistoric chemistry. Our ancestors discovered that certain types of fungi, like Fomes fomentarius, act like natural sponges for fire. Even when it's pouring outside, the interior of this shelf mushroom stays dry and highly flammable. Humans would harvest these mushrooms, dry them out during the rare sunny days, and carry them inside protective leather pouches like a prehistoric battery pack of sparks. To burn wet wood, they used a technique called internal coal management. They would build a tiny, sheltered structure using flat stones inside their cave, create a concentrated bed of high-temperature charcoal using their hidden dry tinder, and then place the wet branches around the heat source to dry them out before feeding them into the flame. It was slow, tedious, and stressful. One drop of water leaking from the cave ceiling onto the core ember could end the lineage forever. What happens when you trap 40 highly active, survival-driven humans inside a dark, cramped stone cave for 6 weeks straight with absolutely nothing to do because it won't stop raining outside? You get massive psychological friction. As we explored in our locked-in framework regarding personal space, human beings under close-quarters stress can become hyper-aggressive. If two hunters start fighting over who is occupying the driest corner of the cave, the social fabric breaks. To prevent the tribe from self-destructing out of pure boredom and anxiety, ancient humans did something extraordinary. They invented interior design and mythology. Many archaeologists believe that some of the most famous cave art in human history, like the stunning paintings in Lascaux Cave in France or Altamira in Spain, weren't created during beautiful summer afternoons. They were created during long, brutal winters and endless pluvial periods when humans were trapped inside for weeks at a time. By the dim light of animal fat lamps, our ancestors crushed red ochre, mixed it with charcoal, and painted their dreams, their hunts, and their gods onto the stone walls. They didn't just paint for fun. They used art as a psychological anchor. The cave walls became a window to the outside world they were temporarily cut off from. They told stories, sang songs, and passed down the lore that kept the community unified while the world outside was dissolving into mud. Here's the ultimate historical twist that connects you directly to those shivering cavemen. Have you ever noticed that almost every single ancient civilization on Earth, regardless of continent, language, or culture, has a massive story about a catastrophic world flood? The Sumerians wrote about it in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The ancient Babylonians had the story of Atrahasis. The Bible has the story of Noah's Ark. The ancient Greeks had the myth of Deucalion. Native American tribes across both continents have vivid oral histories of a time when the waters rose and swallowed the mountains. For centuries, modern historians treated these stories as pure religious fantasy or metaphorical folklore. But geologists and anthropologists now look at the data differently. When the Ice Age shifted into pluvial cycles, the rapid melting of glaciers combined with months of non-stop rain caused catastrophic, sudden sea level rises. Entire land bridges vanished overnight. Valleys that had been dry for 10,000 years suddenly became permanent lakes. To a small band of humans whose entire known world consisted of a single 30-mile valley, if that valley filled with water from endless rain, the world literally did end. The survivors who managed to climb to the highest peaks carried that trauma in their memories for generations. They repeated the story around campfires for thousands of years, until writing was finally invented, turning the terrifying reality of a prehistoric rainy season into the foundational myths of human civilization. Today, when we hear rain tapping against our window pane, we think it's cozy. We put on a sweater, make a warm cup of coffee, and complain if our food delivery app takes an extra 15 minutes to arrive. We have completely insulated ourselves from the sky. We conquered the rain. We built roofs that don't leak, roads that drain, and clothes that repel moisture with synthetic chemistry. But by turning the rain into a minor inconvenience, we also lost something beautiful. For our ancestors, the end of an endless rainstorm wasn't just a change in the weather, it was a literal resurrection. When the clouds finally parted and the first warm rays of sunlight hit the wet grass of the savanna, the entire tribe would step out of the dark stone cave, breathe in the fresh air, and feel a profound, visceral gratitude just to be alive. They survived the sky falling, using nothing but mushrooms, flint, and absolute community trust. They stood in the dark so that you could stand in the light. What about you? What is the longest time you've ever spent stuck indoors during a massive storm without internet or power? Did you use the time to create something cool, or did you just argue with your family like a true caveman? Let me know in the comments below.